Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Crapo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Liu, appreciate having you here with us today. I want to continue the focus on tax reform as we did in our private discussions. As I've shared with you in my work with the Bowles-Simpson Commission and in other areas of trying to address putting together a comprehensive deficit reduction package and debt reduction package, I view tax reform, as I've heard you say today, to be a key part of that, not because of the need to raise revenue, which is where you and I may have some disagreement, but because of the need to generate growth and have a pro-growth element in the recovery effort for our country in dealing with our debt crisis. And that's, I think, the first part of the question I want to ask you, and I think you've already answered it, but I want to get it very clearly on the record. To me, in the last few months, the discussion over tax reform has taken, in some cases, a concerning turn. And I've heard the term tax reform used all too frequently to be a revenue-generating device. I understand it can be utilized to generate revenue, but please tell me why, again, why you believe tax reform is needed in our economy.
Thank you, Senator. As I think we discussed in the conversation we had, I considered it a lost opportunity in December and January that we didn't get to a final agreement on our fiscal challenges so that we'd be able to debate tax reform after resolving the fiscal challenge. I think that there is still more work to be done in terms of the fiscal path, and we need more revenue to be part of it. I think that separate from that, there's a need to do tax reform. And in clearing out the tax code and broadening the base, there's room to raise the revenue that we need. Just a few months ago, there was a lot of discussion as to whether or not we should raise tax rates or raise revenue by broadening the base. Well, we did the tax rates, we didn't broaden the base. So there's room in the conversation for both. And I would look forward on a bipartisan basis to achieving the goal both of being on a sound fiscal footing and, equally importantly, perhaps more importantly in terms of the long-term growth of the economy, having a tax code that makes sense for individuals and businesses so that we have a thriving investment environment.
I agree with that. I think that we would have been hard-pressed to create a tax code if we tried that was more unfair, more complex, more expensive to comply with, and frankly more anti-competitive to our own business interests than we have now. And we need to correct that. And I look forward to working with you in partnership on that. I'd like to get into a little bit more detail. If you look at the corporate side, and you've discussed the need to lower the statutory rate, and I agree. Do you have a target rate in mind? I know a lot of us have talked about 25% as at least a level of 25% that we need to reach.
The challenge, Senator, is how far we're willing to go in broadening the base. We don't have the ability to lose revenue as we go through business tax reform. I think it's challenging to get all the way to 25, but I think the more aggressive we are at broadening the base, the more progress we'll be able to make at lowering the rate.
Do you agree that on the corporate side that we should be revenue neutral? My understanding is that in the past we've focused on at least the corporate reforms being revenue neutral.
I think the primary goal in business corporate tax reform is to have the tax code be simplified and to be consistent with a more robust investment environment, particularly as we are in a competitive environment with other countries. I think it can be done in a revenue neutral way. I don't believe we have the ability to raise the revenue that we need to deal with our fiscal problem and have it cost revenue as we go through business tax reform.
And with regard to business taxation, many have made the argument, and I tend to agree with it, that we need to pay very close attention to the individual code with regard to its impact on business taxation. Do you think we can do corporate reform without also doing individual tax reform?
Senator, I think we could, but I don't think it would be the best way to do it. I think the best thing would be for us to do both individual and business tax reform. We do have a combination of different forms of business organization. The closer we get to a place where the corporate tax system is one that is open for more business, the more competitive we'll be. But we need to keep both in play. I mean, right now, the challenge is are many, but I think once we're doing tax reform, we should do it right, and we should do both.
I wanted to get into some Dodd-Frank issues, but I see my time's running out. One last quick question. On the corporate reform side, are you open to negotiating a competitive territorial system in the corporate code?
Senator, I think that as we lower our rate, we ought to be looking at having kind of a minimum worldwide tax rate where we're trying to level the playing field. We actually have a debate between whether we go one way or the other, and we have a hybrid system now, and it's a question of where we set the dial. I think that there is room to work together on this.
Thank you.